hosted by the Ministry of the Environment Japan in collaboration with UNFCCC Secretariat, ICRAE, and the Institute of Global Environmental Strategies, IGS. I am Fujino Junichi from IGS, today's MC for today's exciting forum. Let me invite His Excellency Koizumi Shinjiro, the Minister of the Environment Japan, and Her Excellency Madame Patricia Espinosa, the Executive Secretariat of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Minister Koizumi kindly leads this opening session. Floor is yours.
We're not.
Honorable guests, distinguished partners, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Zero Carbon City International Forum. I am Koizumi Shinjiro, Minister of the Environment and Minister in charge of Climate Change, Japan.
Yes.
In opening this forum, I would like to say a few words on behalf of the organizer. First of all, thank you very much for your participation in this forum from around the world. I am grateful to all the speakers and the moderators of this forum from 28 cities and national organizations in 15 countries and 11 international organizations. I would also like to express my deep appreciation to the UNFCCC Secretariat, IGES, ICRAE, and the World Bank for their support to this forum. We face two global crises, COVID-19 and climate change. To tackle this extraordinary challenge, all countries need to cooperate and unite. That's why we held a ministerial meeting of the online platform last September with the UNFCCC. The participating countries shared their actions for green recovery from the COVID-19 and agreed that redesigning our socioeconomic systems is important. The key to achieving that is three transitions: to decarbonize society, to circular economy, and to decentralize society. We also reconfirmed that the policy and action of local governments are crucial because of their direct link to citizens' daily life and activities. Based on that idea, Japan is promoting a decarbonized society from the ground up, starting with the cities. The number of Japanese zero-carbon cities or local governments committing to zero-carbon emissions by 2050 has now reached 320, covering more than 100 million people. To accelerate such a movement, the Japanese government launched the Council for National and Local Decarbonization in last December. There, our focus will be on developing leading local models for decarbonization during the next 5 to 10 years, because that is a crucial period for us to achieve the 2050 goal. And by spreading those models to other regions, we hope to trigger a decarbonization domino effect around the country. And our ambition does not stop in Japan. We want to see the decarbonization domino effect spreading to the world. So, we will continue supporting cities' initiatives through our city-to-city collaboration program. The program has already linked 39 cities in the world with 15 Japanese cities, including Tokyo, Yokohama, and Kitakyushu. And to further accelerate the city's movement towards decarbonization, we decided to hold this Zero Carbon City International Forum together with the UNFCCC Secretariat, which is promoting the Race to Zero campaign. Let us all share policy and actions of cities leading the movement and learn from each other's experience. And let us hope that this forum will trigger a global decarbonization domino effect. Now, I am honored to invite Ms. Patricia Espinosa, Executive Secretary, UNFCCC, for her opening remarks. I'd also like to hear especially about the importance of local governments' efforts for decarbonization and the role of the UNFCCC in promoting the activities. Mr. Espinosa, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Minister. It's really a pleasure to be here. I want to start by thanking you for organizing this forum and bringing together this diverse group of state and non-state participants from around the world. A few years ago, we at UN Climate Change developed a concept that we call inclusive multilateralism, a recognition that governments alone, national governments alone, cannot address climate change. Success is only possible when state and non-state actors including civil society, especially the most vulnerable amongst us, are an active part of finding solutions to climate change. This meeting, in my view, exemplifies the spirit of inclusive multilateralism, and I want to underline, particularly, as you have just mentioned, the very important role of cities. I recognize the government of Japan for its recent climate change progress, including Prime Minister Suga's announcement that Japan will work towards becoming a carbon neutral society by 2050. The public and private sectors are responding. More than 200 local and regional governments in Japan committing to net zero CO2 emissions by 2050. It shows how leadership and collaboration can accelerate measures to achieve decarbonization. Dear friends, reaching net zero, especially in cities, is a vital part of achieving our long-term climate goals under the Paris Agreement. Success in 2050, however, is impossible without first completing the work of today, of 2021. And that work includes finally moving the Paris Agreement from adoption to implementation. It has been on the table for 5 long years. Yet we cannot get to implementation unless we achieve success at COP26 this coming November. Right now, nations are woefully behind. To be clear, they were behind before the pandemic began. While we have seen recent signs of momentum, nations simply have not done enough to complete work under the Paris Agreement, nor have they sufficiently raised climate ambition under it. An example is the recent NDC synthesis report, measuring the combined impact of national climate action plans under the Paris Agreement. It shows that current levels of climate ambition are very far from putting nations on a pathway that will meet the goals of the Paris Agreement to limit global temperatures to 1.5 degrees by the end of the century. At the current rate, nations will achieve only less than a 1% reduction in emissions by 2030 compared to 2010 levels. And the IPCC, as we know, calls for that reduction to be 45% lower. And that must change in 2021. Major emitters must lead. Faced with a global pandemic and an existential climate change emergency, delay is inexcusable. COP26, held only a few months from now, must be a success. It's a credibility test for our fight against the climate emergency. In my view, there are 4 keys to success at COP26. First, promises made must be promises kept. That means pledges parties made before 2020 must be honored and completed. That means strong NDCs submitted this year, and especially by major emitters. It's also true of the pledge by developed nations to mobilize 100 billion annually to developing nations by 2020. Second, it's time to wrap up outstanding negotiations and implement the Paris Agreement. The clock has simply run out. Implementation is needed at all levels, especially within cities. More people are living in cities than at any point in history. They want and deserve to live in areas that are clean, green, and healthy. The heavy lifting will be done by people such as urban planners, architects, material suppliers, and many others. But they must be supported by national and local policy and investment. We need those policies now. If we want to reach net zero emissions by mid-century, we're talking about a time period of about 30 years. That's the general lifespan of buildings being constructed now. Policies are needed for more than buildings. City infrastructure needs to actively encourage people to adopt sustainable habits, such as walking to work, recycling household waste, adopting a more circular economy, and more. These are only a few quick examples of how implementing the Paris Agreement and with clear plans spelled out in ambitious NDCs can accelerate the transformations throughout society we urgently need, and especially in our cities. The third key for success at COP26 is to raise ambition in mitigation, adaptation, and finance. The best time to raise climate ambition was yesterday. The next best time is today. Never has global expectation and political commitment been so far apart. It's time to close that gap. And when we're talking about raising ambition, we're not just talking about mitigation, but also adaptation and resilience and finance. Fourth, we must leave no voice or solution behind. We must re-engage with observers and non-party stakeholders in a unity of purpose. Our brand of inclusive multilateralism is the only way forward. Everyone has a role to play and everyone must be involved. We see that today. So, dear friends, let us seize this moment. Let us reach not just across borders to do it, but across jurisdictions and generations, cultures and races. Let us build strong, resilient, and sustainable cities. Let us achieve zero emissions in 2050 and make COP26 a success this November. Let us work to complete outstanding negotiations under the Paris Agreement, move it from adoption to implementation, boost our climate ambition, and ensure all voices are heard during this crucial year. And let us build forward, build a better future, a green future, a clean future, and a future that is healthy, safe, resilient, sustainable, and prosperous for all people. Thank you very much, and thank you, Minister Koizumi, for your invitation. Over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Espinosa, for your remarks. Let me once again express our gratitude for the cooperation of UNFCCC in organizing this forum. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, who has sent us a video message, Mr. John Kerry, newly appointed United States.
Hello, everybody. Let me start by thanking the government of Japan and Minister Koizumi, the UNFCCC Secretariat, the ICLEI and IGES, and everyone else involved in organizing this conference on such a critical issue. Over the past year alone, cities around the world have felt the effects of a changing climate in unprecedented ways. We saw this here in the United States from the raging fires that threatened Seattle, Portland, and San Francisco last summer, to the devastating hurricane season that ravaged towns up and down our Atlantic and Gulf coasts, to the sub-freezing temperatures and blackouts that fell over Austin and Houston, Texas, just last month. These are the shared experiences of cities around the globe. Drought and food insecurity in the urban centers of Africa and the Middle East, heat waves in Paris and Berlin, even in the Siberian towns of the Arctic, deadly and record-setting rainfalls and flooding in places like Jakarta, Indonesia, and Omuda, Japan. Cities are also a key part of the climate crisis for another reason. They're actually contributing to the problem. Cities today consume over 2/3 of the world's energy, and they account for more than 70% of global CO2 emissions. The good news is cities are also a big part of the climate solution. They can help accelerate our collective path to net zero emissions by undertaking the kind of thoughtful, long-term planning and bold action exemplified by many of the people tuning in for this conference. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis said local governments were laboratories of democracy. On climate change, cities have proven that they're laboratories of leadership. Tokyo, for example, has laid out a vision for a city 30 years from now with zero-emission cars, buses, boats, and planes, and power plants tapping biomass, geothermal, hydrogen, hydroelectric, solar, and wind energy. Los Angeles and New York, the two largest cities in the United States, have recently launched their own Green New Deal initiatives. A few years ago, when the U.S. federal government decided to walk away from the Paris Agreement, hundreds of cities, counties, and states declared that they were still in and pledged their support. And they have committed to lean in even further now that we are back at the table. All over the globe, cities are stepping up in remarkable ways, including in Japan, where close to 300 local governments representing over 100 million people have committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Japan recently announced the same target nationwide, thanks in part to cities' advocacy and the example that they set. I thank those here who have already joined the city's race to zero and commend your work in furthering this momentum on the important road towards COP26 in Glasgow. We need you. So in that vein, I urge cities everywhere, act locally, but help us galvanize global action. Your counterparts in other countries need to see the transformative projects you're embracing, to share best practices and lessons learned, and to partner together on research and innovation. The fact is, the global subnational effort is critical to getting the world on the path toward net zero emissions by 2050. Thank you again for inviting me to share a few thoughts, and please enjoy the rest of the conference, and I look forward to hearing what comes out of your conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Kerry, for your video message. Mr. Espinosa and Mr. Kerry, I would like to join you in your praise of the local leadership and support for local governments. Mr. Espinosa, I'm looking forward to working with you for the success of COP26 this year. We also welcome the United States' return to the Paris Agreement, as Mr. Kerry said in his video message. We will work closely with the US, including at the Climate Summit in April, so we can spread the decarbonization domino effect together. With this, I conclude the opening session of this forum. Once again, I thank Ms. Espinosa and Mr. Kerry for their participation. In the first plenary session, the heads of cities will take the stage to discuss their efforts, which can be a model for others. I will also join the session and look forward to the discussion. Now let me introduce the moderator of the session, Ms. Ishii Naoko, Director of Center for Global Commons and the Professor of Institute for Future Initiatives, University of Tokyo. Ms. Ishii, over to you.
Thank you, Minister. I am delighted to moderate this important session joined by so many distinguished city leaders. The world is moving toward carbon neutral by 2050. However, just mentioned by Patricia so clearly, the speed and the scale of the current movement is not good enough. It's not commensurate with the magnitude of the challenge we are facing. So it's absolutely needed. We need to accelerate and this movement. Within this context, already mentioned by previous speakers, role of cities is increasingly important. It's really vital. Why I say that? Because cities like you do have a wonderful, high ambition, very concrete plan and strategy, and you have a civil support from your constituency, and maybe most importantly, you have already taken actions. So today, at this session, which I'm now moderating, the one goal is how to explore the way to increase ambition, cement that in the movement, and invite more cities to create that direction. So, but doing so, as already mentioned, we also need to touch upon the COVID-19, which complicates your work. But there must be some good way to even utilize that recovery process to create a resilient and sustainable and just and a society. So in your remarks, the leaders, we would like to hear from you, not only your wonderful, beautiful strategy and plan, but also what is your idea to actually invite other cities to create this domino effects, as mentioned by a minister, and what are the hints that the instrument to spread that kind of ambition, and also, as mentioned by previous speakers, what is your ask for national government? Because I believe collaboration between cities and national government may be critical. So with that questions in mind, we would like to hear from you. And I would like to start with Governor Koike. Governor Koike, you have been exercising your leadership, very strong leadership, but you are also the vice chair of the C40 representing Asia and Oceania. So you must have a lot to share with us. Governor Koike, over to you.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the Zero Carbon Cities International Forum today. And thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you, Minister Koizumi, for inviting me to this important session. Now, as you may know, Tokyo has 1.4 million residents and covers about 20% of Japan's GDP. And in December 2019, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, TMG, formulated the Zero Emission Tokyo Strategy and announced the roadmap and concrete initiatives with the aim of net zero CO2 emissions by 2050. And people's behavior has greatly changed due to the COVID-19 crisis all over the world. And the climate crisis has become even more serious in the years since the announcement. The actions we take during this decade to the 2030 milestone are crucial in realizing net zero CO2 emissions by 2050. And in January, at the Davos agenda, I announced that Tokyo will, by 2030, reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50% from the year 2000 levels and increase the use of electricity generated by renewable sources to 50%. Now is the time to accelerate effective actions against the threat of climate crisis. You can see my backboard. Can you read it? Time to act. This is the very important message to the world from Tokyo. Now, actions taken by cities at the forefront are extremely important. Now, in the spirit of the Time to Act slogan, I decided to develop the global movement of climate actions and held a kickoff meeting last month. And Mrs. Ishii was kind enough to participate that meeting. Thank you very much. And the meeting was attended, as you know, Ms. Ishii here today as a moderator, as well as the mayors and experts who are proactively addressing climate change issues. Now, I'd like to call on a range of actors to work together with us to change actions to have our carbon. For the expanded use of zero-emission vehicles, we have set a very ambitious goal to phase out the sale of new gasoline-only passenger cars in Tokyo by 2030. This will also apply to motorcycles by 2035. And we will further move ahead with the utilization of hydrogen, which is indispensable for decarbonization. Tokyo will encourage the start of the full-scale utilization of hydrogen-related technologies currently on the market by sharing examples of such technologies used for mobility in Tokyo. Another agenda, this is very important. Since approximately 70% of Tokyo's CO2 emissions are derived from buildings, efforts for sustainable buildings are also important. Tokyo introduced an urban cap and trade program in 2010. And this program is the world's first scheme that covers the commercial sector, including office buildings, which are often concentrated in megacities. In fiscal year 2018, the covered facilities reduced emissions by as much as 27% compared to base year levels, attracting a great deal of interest from other cities such as New York. And Tokyo has also been providing policy support focused on measures for building to Kuala Lumpur since last fiscal year. The mayor of Kuala Lumpur, Datuk Mahdi Sheng Nagaha, he's the one to take the leadership. And now I hear that the city is making rapid progress in CO2 reductions at buildings under the strong leadership of Mayor Mahdi. For more than 30,000 small and medium-sized businesses, Tokyo has also implemented a mandatory energy data reporting program and is promoting energy efficiency and climate change measures at buildings from various aspects. Taking advantage of the characteristics of Tokyo with its concentration of real estate and financial institutions, Tokyo will further strengthen its policies to ensure that eco-friendly buildings are also valued in terms of finance. So, green finance. Green finance is a major stimulus that encourages actions to stand against the climate crisis. In addition to issuing green bonds, we have established a Tokyo version of the ESG fund. Tokyo is also advancing studies for the creation of a green finance market in order to ensure the inflows of funds leading to ESG investment from home and abroad. With the Time to Act slogan, you can see those slogans, Tokyo will continue to develop various policies and contribute to the decarbonization of the world in cooperation with cities overseas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Koike. Now, a lot to digest, so that let's take us the time later. Now, I'd like to invite the Governor of the state of Hawaii, David Ige. I understand he is showing up through video.
Aloha. Mahalo for the opportunity to join you today virtually, all the way from Hawaii. Hawaii is the most isolated community on the planet, over 4,000 kilometers from the nearest landmass, and we see the impacts of climate change and sea level rise in a real way. That is why 4 years ago, when our federal government walked away from the Paris Agreement, we were the first state to enact legislation committing ourselves to uphold our portion of the Paris Agreement. We set in law our zero emissions clean economy target, which aims to sequester more atmospheric carbon and greenhouse gases than emitted within the state as quickly as practicable, but no later than 2045. In other words, Hawaii has a carbon negative target to not only stop putting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, but to remove more than we put in. Our local governments, cities, and counties also pledged to stay in the Paris Agreement. I can speak directly that Honolulu, our largest city and the home of Waikiki, has been a strong partner in decarbonizing our economy. Hawaii was also one of the first states to join the U.S. Climate Alliance to better coordinate state-level action to move our country as a whole in a more responsible way forward. The U.S. Climate Alliance is now a bipartisan coalition of about 25 governors and represents 55% of the U.S. population and an $11.7 trillion economy, an economy larger than all countries but the United States and China. Since we've set these goals and joined the U.S. Climate Alliance, the world has changed dramatically. I was proud to welcome President Biden, Secretary Kerry, and the federal government back to the Paris Agreement this year on February 19th. And of course, the coronavirus, which is a wake-up call that we are all a globalized society where our actions have direct impact on each other. Even with such a clear connection and such immediate and devastating impacts from the coronavirus, we see the challenge of collective action and to make the changes we need to respond to COVID-19. Ensuring that how we emerge from this pandemic in a stronger, more equitable, and more resilient manner is top of mind for all of us here today and a lesson in how we must meet the climate crisis. It was just 6 years ago, in 2015, when I committed Hawaii to 100% renewable energy for our power sector. This was a bold and unprecedented step. Hawaii is about 85% dependent on oil shipped here from around the world. Changing our entire power sector to renewable energy in 30 years was bold and ambitious. But that ambition and boldness were rooted in science, engineering, and economics. The science at the time called for decarbonization, and the urgency has only grown. And today, look at the global conversations on renewable energy. We see states and nations aiming for 100% renewable energy by 2040 or even sooner. Island states such as Hawaii, cities and coastal communities around the world depend on the world embracing ambitious climate action to stave off the worst from sea level rise, flooding, and heat-enhanced storms. In addition to our clean energy goals and decarbonization goals, we in Hawaii have established the Sustainable Hawaii Initiative as part of the Aloha Plus Challenge, which sets concrete, measurable targets for both public and private sectors. The goals are protecting 30% of our highest priority watersheds by 2030. Our native forests cover nearly half of our islands and provide habitat for forest life and watersheds that produce fresh, clean water for our people. Effectively manage 30% of our nearshore ocean waters by 2030. Our reefs provide habitat for spectacular marine life and feed us. Our beaches and waves are the foundation of our economy. Doubling local food production to provide food security through protection of lands and water and support for our local farmers. Implementing our biosecurity plan because invasive species have devastated many of Hawaii's natural areas and pose a threat to our tourism economy and industries. In Hawaii, we excel at partnerships, working across sectors to do what needs to be done. Each of these goals relies on a partnership across government sectors, industries, and most importantly, communities bringing aloha from the heart and into the heart of difficult conversations that we must all have to change the trajectory of Hawaii and the world to one that our children can choose to call home. With these global crises, COVID now, but the climate crisis also, we have to find a way to come together. We can work together better through the alignment of local, state, national, and international action. My hope is that Hawaii can serve as a template, that aloha can help the world to work together as a unified voice and collaborate to better protect each of our unique environments and ways of life. Like the Hawaiian voyaging canoe, we are one canoe, one island, one planet. We are reminded of this now more than ever, that we must paddle together, guided by keen navigators to achieve our goals together, to reverse climate change and sustain our oceans, to help each other arrive at a more sustainable, equitable world for all of us. Mahalo again for the opportunity to share these thoughts with you today. I wish you great discussion and look forward to the next time we can connect in person. Aloha.
Thank you so much, Governor Ige. Now we would like to call on the mayor of Kuala Lumpur, Mahadi Chenga. And you can please also actually touch upon the collaboration with the Tokyo metropolitan government. Mayor, please.
Thank you very much, Naoko Ishii-san, for the kind introduction. Fellow panelists, very good afternoon to everyone. My appreciation to our host, the Ministry of Environment Japan, for your kind invitation. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Kuala Lumpur, capital city of Malaysia, started off as a tin mining center in the 19th century, and now it is Malaysia's largest city. Today, the population of Kuala Lumpur is 1.8 million, and it is projected to grow to over 2.25 million by 2040. The city spreads across 243 square kilometers and has a GDP growth rate at around 7% per annum. We remain focused and committed on our mission for Kuala Lumpur to be a world-class, sustainable and livable city for all. Kuala Lumpur aspires to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. Kuala Lumpur carbon neutral aspiration is an extension of the successful collaboration between Kuala Lumpur City Hall and Tokyo Metropolitan Government. Thank you, Governor Koike, for the help rendered to us. Kuala Lumpur Low Carbon Society Blueprint 2030 indicates that 42% of carbon emission in Kuala Lumpur comes from the buildings and 33% are from the city's vehicles. In order to ensure effective buy-in from private stakeholders in carbon reduction, Kuala Lumpur City Hall focuses on its own assets first as pilot projects to showcase decarbonization initiatives. The findings of the pilot project revealed that air conditioning emitted the highest carbon emission. Air conditioning accounts for 63% of the total carbon emission by the buildings. Now, Kuala Lumpur is committed to be a carbon neutral ready by 2040. A roadmap and concrete measures for realizing a decarbonized city in 2050 have been established. Kuala Lumpur City Hall has appointed a consultant to develop an inventory of buildings in the central business district that are utilizing energy efficient equipment. This exercise is expected to be completed by end of this year. We also look forward to collaborate with private companies towards a common vision for the city. Kuala Lumpur City Hall has introduced the planning approval condition for real estate developers to utilize at least 30% of renewable energy in their projects. As a way to promote the idea of carbon neutral city to the public, Kuala Lumpur City Hall has planned the installation of solar power systems on spaces that are highly visible to the public. Apart from this solar PV systems installation project, Kuala Lumpur City Hall has also identified several locations for large-scale solar farming projects. Wan Semaju will be the first pilot project for this purpose. Wan Semaju has been earmarked to be a carbon neutral growth center by 2050. It is located in the northeastern part of Kuala Lumpur and has an area of 2,650 acres with 100,000 population. Kuala Lumpur City Hall is in the process of implementing the usage of the Go KL electric bus, which is expected to operate in Wangsa Maju by the end of this year. This Wangsa Maju Growth Center will play a crucial pioneering role to lead the other growth centers in Kuala Lumpur to progressively transition into carbon neutrality by 2050. To support the low carbon initiatives further, Kuala Lumpur City Hall has also completed several bicycle and pedestrian networks and park and ride facilities in various parts of the city, and in particular, Wangsa Maju. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, the efforts to progress towards a carbon neutral city is a journey and not a destination. The collaboration with Tokyo Metropolitan Government has indeed proved beneficial, with invaluable input and insights for Kuala Lumpur City Hall. With the support of Tokyo, Kuala Lumpur will be able to achieve its vision to be a low-carbon society by 2030, to be carbon neutral ready by 2040, and carbon neutral by 2050. With that, I thank all of you for joining us at this forum, and I look forward to the potential of future collaborations with many of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I really appreciated it. Now I'd like to invite Nakata Deona, the Mayor of Bonn.
Excellency, esteemed fellow leaders in Japan and around the world, thank you for inviting me to speak to the Zero Carbon Forum today. I'm truly inspired by the pathway Japan is taking in the spirit of the new redesigning initiative, driving Japanese cities and prefectures to net zero by 2050. Minister Koizumi, I would like to commend your visionary perseverance and in particular your collaborative approach, allowing for Japanese cities and prefectures to play a key role as Japan commits to climate neutrality by 2050. And the world is looking toward this vision, also to be reflected by the third Japanese NDC to be released before COP26. As a pioneering and responsible city in Germany and the EU, and in particular as the home to UN Bonn and the Climate Secretariat for 25 years now, Bonn is demonstrating climate ambition and action. Bonn's commitment to climate neutrality by 2035 stands strong, jointly driven by our citizens and my administration. Our citizen-driven initiative Bonn for Future is working on innovative ways towards achieving a climate-neutral Bonn, in particular in the fields of mobility and renewable energy. However, neither is Bonn nor are you walking alone on this pathway. I'm delighted to also address this forum in my capacity as co-chair of the Climate Action Portfolio of ICLAI Global Executive Committee 2021 to 2024. Within this scope, and together with my co-chair, Major Zoya from Izmir, Turkey, I'm committed to mobilizing thousands of cities and regions in the ICLAI network towards ambitious climate action. And we will bring in and advocate this contribution with the UNFCCC. ICLAI is an official partner of UNFCCC Race to Zero and a lead partner of Cities Race to Zero. Within this scope, we are looking forward to working with the Japanese government to bring Japanese cities and prefectures to the Race to Zero via ICLAI's climate neutrality framework and demonstrate commitment and leadership towards, at and beyond COP26.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Now I'd like to call on the Mayor of Xiaowen, Mr. Mohammed Sefini. Floor is yours, sir. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this very important event. It is clear that cities have a very important role to play in the implementation of the climate agenda. 75% of the world's population will live in cities by 2050, whether they are large, intermediary, or small cities. 80% of energy consumption is currently in cities, and over 70% of greenhouse gases are produced in cities. Studies have shown that 4% of emissions are produced in Africa. Population growth and urban development will be higher in Africa than other continents. Today, we are discussing the importance of zero carbon cities. I want to highlight, particularly from an African perspective, the importance of supporting cities on their journeys to the zero emission future, while ensuring that they are able to adapt to the impacts of climate change. Climate change adaptation is a major priority for African cities, and we would like to see that while we race to zero, we also, and with the same emphasis, rise to resilience. Multi-level governance is essential to realize a zero carbon future. All tiers of governments need to work together to fulfill their mandates, especially as they relate to climate action. The country that I come from, Morocco, has prioritized multi-level collaboration, and I would like to appeal to all present to engage strongly in the UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action Group. Multi-level cooperation is essential. Indeed, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us the values such as solidarity, proximity, equality, sustainability, and resilience are essential for the definition of the new development models for cities and territories. The green resilience of cities cannot be guaranteed with isolated effort, but with the federation of all energies and resources and at all levels of governance, be it local, regional, or national. In my city, Xiaowen, intermediary cities in the north of Morocco, we are committed to the fight against climate change, and we have a climate action plan, which we are in the process of implementation, but the mitigation and adaptation projects. The sectors of energy and water are very important for my city and for African cities in general. The use of renewable energy and energy efficiency are among our priority. Intermediary cities in Africa and around the world have an important role to play in tackling climate change. These cities are some of the fastest growing globally. We, with catalytic resources, can unlock major potential for scaled climate action. The intermediation role, size, and proximity are assets to strengthen participatory democracy, the emergence of sustainable local economy, and to face the climate challenges. Multi-level dialogues, cooperation, and coordination, both between intermediate cities and large cities, are essential for the implementation for the climate agenda. This multi-level governance also stretches the strong multilateralism and close collaboration between networks and partners. Everyone has a part to play, and we set bold targets and progress towards ambitious and transformative actions. At the place in today's event, learning from our colleagues and peers allows us to be inspired and enables us to move more quickly towards global, national, and local climate change targets. The localization of the indices are essential for the implementation of the climate agenda. Access to the world of international finance should be facilitated for the cities of the global south. Support and technical assistance are urgently needed for cities which generally lack specialized and well-prepared human resources. Finally, I think that COP26 will be a great moment, a great opportunity for cities in the fight against climate change to be fully recognized. Local governments and municipal authorities, led by ICLE network, and which brings together all city networks and platforms, is making great efforts in this direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. That is really a great segue to the next speaker, the leader Susan Aitken, and then your city, the Glasgow, is hosting the COP26. So the leader, the Aitken, you must have a great plan and also marching order to us. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Ishii. And good morning from Scotland and the host city of COP26. Good evening to all of you in Japan. I'm truly honoured to take part in this global event and to be able to, again, to collaborate with peer cities from across the world as we seek to work together to secure a sustainable future for our planet. Glasgow's status as the host for COP26 has given us an incredible opportunity to join these global conversations on the critical importance of cities in addressing our climate emergency. In the 5 years since the role of cities and non-state actors in addressing climate change was recognised in Paris, it's us collectively who have created the momentum, transforming aspirations into action to secure a safer, cleaner and more just future. Scotland's own ambitious zero carbon targets will not be met without the lead of its biggest city, its economic and innovation powerhouse, Glasgow. The relationship between the national and the city is replicated all over the world, in Japan, in the United States, in Germany, in Indonesia. Glasgow, it's a responsibility that we, across the world, that investment in cities to lead the way on delivering what our citizens need and what the world needs on climate action must lie in that relationship between cities and nation states. Glasgow's privilege of hosting COP26 also comes with huge responsibility. That's a responsibility to the visiting states, to delegates, to activists, and to our own citizens that we host a successful event. It's a responsibility to Glasgow's residents that the ambitions and aspirations of COP are relevant to them, to their everyday lives and the challenges that they live with. And it's a responsibility to the leadership of our peer cities and local governments that our voices are heard and that the voices of our citizens are heard amid what will be an international focus on nation states. We must remember that while nation states pledge and make targets, it's cities that deliver on climate action. If COP26 is to be the COP of action, then we must ensure that the city's vital role is recognised, prioritised and resourced. We will all take our place at Glasgow's table and grasp this opportunity to demonstrate our leadership on the climate emergency. I suspect that many of you will be unfamiliar with my city and our history. We are, I believe, an ideal location for COP26. And the reasons for that are the challenges created by our past. We were one of the birthplaces of the first industrial age. Proximity to raw materials like coal and iron and to the North Atlantic allowed us to become one of the world's great shipbuilding cities, and our heavy industry grew around this. But its decline had a deep social and physical impact on our city, taking many decades before our recovery saw us re-emerge into a low carbon and sustainable focus now in the present. And now we stand on the cusp of further transition to net zero carbon. That history and our experience can make us a template for many cities across the world whose journeys to their own industrial age came much later than Glasgow's did. Today, we still need to overcome many of those legacies to help us achieve our target of carbon neutrality by 2030 and Scotland's target by 2045. The core of our city remains as it was designed in the late 1800s, a grid very like many US cities and dominated by cars. But we are now redesigning our main streets to give priority to people for walking, cycling, and making our streets healthier, greener, and more attractive. This is a long-term project and it will take up to a decade, but its impact will be transformative. And many thousands of our citizens live in work in buildings that are well over 100 years old. They're beautiful buildings which define the look and feel of our city, but they are not energy efficient. And to reduce the emissions from them to make them warmer and more cost effective will require many billions of pounds of investment in the coming decade. Our river, the River Clyde, once the centrepiece of our city life, has until recently lacked the focus and investment it demands. But mitigating the threats of climate change also opens new opportunities for our economy, for new renewable energy sources, and to improve the place quality of our riverside communities. Cities like ours, like Glasgow, like Tokyo, and all the other cities who are speaking today are where both the greatest challenges and the greatest gains for carbon neutrality lie. And alongside and within climate action also lie the greatest opportunities for social and economic renewal for our citizens and that the recovery from the COVID pandemic now demands. We sprint to Glasgow with renewed hope and optimism that the world can once again coalesce around agreement on climate action. And here in my city, together, we will reset our planet on a safer, sustainable, and more equitable course. And I look forward to seeing you all in November. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leader Aitken. It's really great to hear from all of you, your ambition and your strategy and your concrete actions. Now it's time for us to have a bit of a conversation, maybe one common the question, that is that what you can really do to create the more momentum or domino effects to invite other cities and citizens to join and create this high ambition loop. What exactly you can do for them and based on your own experience. And on that, then I would like to go from the same order, the Governor Koike, Mayor Mahadi, Chengar, the Mayor Sefini, and the Speaker, Leader Aitken. And now we need to change a little bit of the timeline that we plan to have a final takeaway session. But then because we are a bit of running behind the time and some of you have to leave on time. So I just would like to let you know that then that this will be maybe your last opportunity to say words. So please combine your final takeaway message and to the audience. So let me start with Governor Koike, please.
Okay, Mrs. Ishii, thank you very much for moderating. And what I would like to say is that achieving the 1.5 centigrade global target requires ambitious efforts made by a range of actors, including national governments, cities, businesses, and NGOs, all working closely together. Above all, it is critical for cities with common challenges to share policies and knowledge to realize decarbonization. As Mayor Mahdi and I mentioned, Tokyo has been providing policy support focused on measures for buildings to Kuala Lumpur since last fiscal year, as well as sharing knowledge about the cap and trade program with New York. I'm very pleased that Tokyo's experience and know-how in measures for building has been helping other cities. And Tokyo has been actively participating in C40, and I am vice chair of the group. And I'm collaborating with more than 90 major cities around the world in the field of climate change measures. And so Tokyo is also a member of, Tokyo is also a member of various international environmental networks such as ICLEI to share advanced initiatives and strengthen cooperation with them. Tokyo will continue to exercise leadership to promote international cooperation and accelerate actions toward decarbonization. Thank you very much, everyone. And please allow me to leave because I have a very important meeting to tackle COVID-19.
Absolutely. It's time for you to take that one.
Koizumi for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Governor Koike.
Thank you, Governor Koike. Yeah, so let's now move on to the Mayor of the Kuala Lumpur, Mr. Mahadi Chengar.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you very much. Then I just want to highlight here that we have got our own, as I said earlier in my speech, we have our own low carbon society blueprint 2030. And I would like to reiterate here that we have set a very ambitious target. By 2030, we wanted to reduce the carbon emission in the city by 70%. So it is a very ambitious, and we hope that we will be able to achieve this. But again, as we learn from TMG, the visibility is very important. And because of that, we earmark Day1 Semaju New Growth Center as a pilot to show the people of Kuala Lumpur how do we actually implement the low carbon initiatives and programs in the city. So by choosing One Semaju, we hope to show a lot more the implementation of the program, like having solar panels, solar farms, and more green infrastructure like pedestrian walkways and bicycle tracks, and encourage more people to take public transport by having the facilities of park and ride. And also I would like to mention this year that we are going to use the electric buses soon. So madam, this is what we are doing, and these are our commitment, and this is our effort that we really want to transform, we really want to achieve the target set, and I hope we will be able to achieve by 2030, by 2040, of course, carbon neutrality by 2050. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Now I'd like to call on the Mayor from Xiaowen, Mayor the Sefini. Floor is yours, Mayor, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I am Mohamed Sefiani, Mayor of Xiaowen. I think that the message that we heard in this event, we have morning here in Morocco, are very, very, very interesting. And we confirm that the role of cities in the implementation of the Paris Agreement is very, very important. Without cities, we can't talk about the implementation of the climate agenda. It's clear for us. In my city, for example, we have the commitment of the local government and the commitment of citizens by the NGO, private sector, university, and other non-state actors. It's very important to have the participatory approach in the planification and the implementation of the project. Intermediary cities, as the large cities, are very important in this fight against climate change. And Glasgow, the COP26, for me, for us, should be historical for the commitment in cities and the recognition of the role as not only at spectator but at the table of negotiation. and the localization of the NDC is our hope. I am very optimistic, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Now, last but not least, then may I invite Leader Aitken.
Thank you very much. This morning has been very inspiring to hear such unity of purpose across different cities and indeed nations from Minister Koizumi and Special Envoy Kerry and from Secretary Espinosa speaking on behalf of the United Nations of the world. It's clear that we do have a unity of purpose and that we all want to deliver some really strong outcomes from COP26. For me, I want the name of my city to be associated with something that is truly transformative, that truly delivers for the planet and for the people, especially who are suffering the greatest loss and damage from climate change right now and who need us to come together and deliver. But often words are easy. And pledges are easy and targets are easy. It is the delivery that is hard. And the message that we've heard today is that cities are leading on the delivery, on actually turning words and targets into actions. But none of us can do it on our own. Collaboration will be absolutely crucial. And just as we've seen in the response to the COVID emergency and to this global pandemic, where there is a need to share equitably the technology, the innovation and the response to an emergency to ensure that the world is able to share and benefit equally from innovations that are taking place, no matter where they may be, whether that is a vaccination or whether it is a new piece of technology to reduce emissions in homes or in transport, or a new type of renewable energy. It's essential that we share and we collaborate. This can't be something that either cities or nation states hold on to themselves. It must be a truly global effort. And I hope that something that comes out very strongly from COP26 will be a commitment by the wealthier, more affluent nations to ensure that they share what they have with countries across the world, and particularly countries in the global south who are suffering the greatest loss and damage right now.
Thank you so much, Leader Aitken. Now is the time to invite Environmental Minister Koizumi, who is actually behind this entire session, or actually the event. I actually am quite interested in hearing from him that are we meeting your expectation, or actually that are you getting what you would like to see? So the Minister Koizumi, floor is yours.
Thank you, Ishii-san. I'm very impressed by the progress made by the cities and their ambitious commitment toward zero carbon emissions. First, let me make some comments on the presentations by the speakers. Governor Koike of Tokyo talked about their efforts, which can be a good model for others. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government and our ministry are cooperating in the promotion of zero-emission vehicles, and we hope we can continue to work together to implement effective measures. We heard earlier from Kuala Lumpur's mayor about their cooperation with the Tokyo Metropolitan Government that led to the city's pledge of carbon neutrality by 2050. I would like to welcome these moves as the first decarbonization domino effect born out of city-to-city collaboration. I think that the target and action of the state of Hawaii will inspire other island regions as an excellent off-grid model using renewable energies. I hope that their efforts will make good progress towards the state's goal for 2045. I wish to pay my respect to cities like Bonn and Glasgow, who have set the carbon neutrality target year well ahead of 2050 and are pushing forward their decarbonization efforts. I expect that such ambitious goal setting will attract investments into their cities, leading to innovations. I welcome the approach of local governments leading a discussion towards decarbonization in their countries and abroad, like Xiaowen City. The city's trailblazer leadership, which is not limited to big ones, will surely pave the way for the decarbonization domino effect. I believe one of the roles of the national governments is to promote such model initiatives so that they are emulated by other regions and spur a movement of decarbonization. So let me share with you what the Japanese government is doing to support cities' initiatives. I will talk about two things. First, the national and local governments are jointly developing a roadmap for regional decarbonization suited to the local lifestyles at the Council for National and Local Decarbonization. Yokohama City and Nagano Prefecture, which will later join this forum, are also participating in this council. The next step based on this roadmap will be to strengthen support for local governments to introduce the latest but applicable technologies to their regions. The coming 5 years will be crucial in deploying such technologies. What is important is to create leading models of decarbonization in different regions, which will inspire others to do the same. In other words, creating a decarbonization domino effect. As Mr. Kerry said in his video message, cities are laboratories. New ideas are tested and various measures implemented in an integrated fashion. And it is our role as the national government to make sure that such leading efforts will expand to wider region. I believe this approach of Japan can be a model for collaboration between the national and local governments for decarbonization. Second, we will promote city-to-city collaboration to expand the decarbonization domino effect to the world. City-to-city collaboration creates opportunities for mutual learning and the transfer of technologies and know-how of decarbonization. Our ministry has been supporting a city-to-city collaboration program since 2013 with 39 cities in 13 countries and 15 cities in Japan. This collaboration has generated 15 low-carbon or decarbonization projects such as waste to energy. We look forward to more cases of successful collaboration coming out of this program, like the example of Tokyo and Kuala Lumpur. We sincerely hope that decarbonization movement in Japan will contribute to the efforts in other countries. And let me assure you that our ministry is committed to supporting cities' efforts so that these will finally lead to a global decarbonization domino effect. Thank you for your kind attention. Back to Ishi-san.
Thank you, Minister. Actually, I'm supposed to sum up, but you have done so well, and I really don't have much to add. I just want to say that the two words or the phrase I learned today, it's actually the inclusive multilateralism, together with no voices unheard, which is really a good way of promoting the way we work together. I also learned a very interesting word, the city as a laboratory of either testing or the experiments. That is also the spirit of why we want to promote the cities, but such a wonderful assurance from the minister that the national government together to really help the cities to do their part. And in one word, I was so shocked at the beginning that Espinosa said that we were so apart from what we need to be there and where we are, 1% versus 45%. And that really made me think that we really have to come together, that we have only 10 years left to change our course. The minister sometimes said we need a redesign of the society and the economy. That's why we have to come together, and we were all in together, and let's move it up together. Thank you so much for joining this session, and thank you so much, Minister and the government, to organize this event, and appreciate all the participants and the panelists to listen to this session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.